wars and tensions raised with the different consulates being closed tit for tat. I mean, you've got the Houston one being closed here in the U.S. and then China closed one. So China tensions are certainly rising, but let's get into what we're going to cover today. Number one, unemployment, Fed decisions, interest rates, housing, inflation, and stock markets. Well, the timeline of opportunities has changed just a little bit. There's a couple revisions that we'd like to make. And if you remember back in February of 2020, I created this economic timeline, but we've added a few things to it. And let me just go back a little bit here, and you'll see here the stock market under Trump and stock market under Biden. So I've created some additional algorithms based upon some of the updated, let's say, proposals by Biden. And I do have another update on that front when we get to the real estate. So taxes under Trump and taxes under Biden. We had phase one where the virus hit us, and we knew that the virus is going to take over economically because people are going to be unemployed. But we also know that the institutions kind of took advantage of this, and the institutions started selling billions of dollars. And then the consumer fear set in. The companies started closing doors for the virus. The pandemic closed down, and more people became unemployed. At the same time, real estate kind of went down. Now, I want to throw one little change in here, because back in February, I said that my algorithm would say that real estate would continue down. However, what we found is that when they lowered the interest rates so low, we see a short-term real estate surge, which is not in my original economic timeline. However, we are still in over 8.5 million forbearances, rent forgivenesses, and rent deferments. So again, I don't think that this short-term blip is going to have a long-term effect on the real estate. I did estimate that as soon as the viruses, and I'm going to cover the new viruses, the vaccines that we have on the forefront, as soon as those started being released and people started getting back out, we would see a resurgence. Now, what I did not anticipate is this social unrest, the cities under lockdown, the ongoing, police defunding of the police, the issues that are going on there. And I also really did not give enough, not benefit, but I didn't quantify the absolute ridiculousness of a lot of people and the way they treated the virus. I mean, these COVID parties where people will join a party just to get the COVID virus. There's just a man that was 30 years old, and he went to a virus because he claimed that the virus was a hoax. And this COVID virus, what they do is they invite people, and they literally share things so that the other people will get it. And then whoever gets it first wins a prize. Honestly, I did not anywhere in my algorithm compute that kind of stupidity. And unfortunately, this 30-year-old young man lost his life because he went to this COVID party and he thought it was a hoax, and well, he ended up dying. So again, there were some things here back in February and March that I didn't anticipate. I gave my algorithm about an 80% accuracy, and that 20% was to leave things for the unknowns. And so again, I think that the unknowns right now were the social unrest, number one. Number two, also the inability for the American public to band together and try to stop the virus by keeping social distancing, by wearing masks in public and in private, not having COVID parties, it's just, it is, I never anticipated that. However, we're still 80% on track. Well, I do have an update as far as Biden is concerned, as I promised. Here, and you'll look, there's this downward green versus the downward blue. The downward blue is my estimates if Biden gets elected. The downward green is if Trump gets re-elected. So again, there is some differences in what I feel is going to happen within the stock market. And one of the main reasons I can tell you this is the tax proposals that Biden has on the table. And just yesterday, Thursday, there was a new proposal by Biden in order to pay this debt that we're incurring for the Corona bailout or the Corona stimulus or the Corona relief, whatever you want to call it. Here's a proposal that is to be very harshly taken. The proposal is to raise or create a federal real estate tax, or make the states increase the real estate tax and give some of that back to the feds to pay off the stimulus. Now, I am in total disagreement with that, because what you're doing is you're going to crash the real estate market, you're going to crash the mortgage market, you're going to crash the mortgage bond market. It is going to be the most horrendous outcome that I can't even imagine it. Let me just remind everybody, I was in practice back in 1986. And if you don't remember that tax act, it was called TRA 86, Tax Reform Act of 1986. And basically what they did is they stopped the full deductions on real estate. Well, I can tell you that I was a real estate investor back in 1986, and that crashed the market. It took years for that market to recover. Anytime the federal government gets their nose into the real estate market and they start messing around with the tax deductions or the capital gains tax on a sale, or, real estate taxes now, I mean, this is something that we really need to watch. And if I see some more traction being gained by this, on the Democrat side, then I am going to change my algorithm, and that blue marker is going to drop a lot faster than what you're seeing right there. I estimated that the businesses would reopen, and as they reopen, of course, the economy gets back to normal. Again, you just really have to watch how this election is really playing out right now, because if the election plays out, there's a whole different timeline. Birth rates are up. That's a good thing. However, birth rates are only up in comparison to where they were. However, overall birth rates are extremely down. Here's a good example. In 1956, the average family had average female had 4.7 children. Now it's 0.5. So there are some countries, as an example, like Japan, who estimate that by the year 2070, their population will be cut in half because the birth rate has dropped so greatly. So again, this is something to watch out for. As we get through the different phases in this pandemic, I have estimated and algorithmed out the different things that will happen, which you will see play out in the next couple slides here as we give some updates. Well, the virus vaccine update. Well, let's take a look. 1 company approved for limited use. 4 companies in phase 3 in the final test. 13 companies in phase 2, 19 companies in phase 1, and the big winner is got 140 companies in preclinical, not ready for human trials. But the big key that I'd like to point out is you've got 5 companies, between 1 company approved for limited use and 4 companies in phase 3. Unemployment, 1.416 million applications last week. Unemployment's holding steady at 11.1% week over week. Again, we'll refer that back to the benchmark in April at 14.7%. Current discussions in Congress, the maximum unemployment at 70% of prior or the cap. I'll cover that next here. The proposals, the House of Representatives passed the HERO Act. That was a $3 trillion stimulus relief pack. The problem that the Senate is having with it, which I would agree with, is that part of that, majority of that, up to 1/3 of that, is to bail out states for their poor money management and debt. Hey, look, I decided to move away from New York and California because I felt like I was living in a socialist state. I felt like if you didn't want to work hard and you wanted to move to one of those states and you wanted to live off the system, what a great place to move to. So there's a lot of good-hearted, hard-working people that are paying more than their fair share in those states. So unfortunately, this is what this HEROES Act is trying to purport. So this is basically, it's socialism for fiscally responsible states to bail out those irresponsible states. Now that means that if this goes through, every American would pay for those irresponsible states. Every American would also pay for the excessive pensions. Now listen, I do truly believe that policemen and firemen and teachers are grossly underpaid for what they do. However, if you go to a state like New York, you've got retired teachers making $150,000 to $200,000 on pension plans. So while I appreciate their service, that has a cost to the taxpayer, right? So the Senate, they've got a $1 trillion act. However, I don't agree with this either. It's too small to bail out the businesses. You got 40 to 50% unemployment. I mean, the SBA right now put out an estimate Wednesday that 60% of small businesses that closed will not reopen. They need to get on the ball. Come on, this is both the Democrats and the Republicans. Like that joker there from that Republican from Kentucky who loves to just jump in there and hold everything up. I can't remember the guy's name. Thank God I could forget it. Anyway, on the Senate floor, that's where it is right now. It's being argued out. The second round of PPP for employees under 100 employees, which have lost 50% of revenues, again on the Senate floor. The PPP has been extended until August 8th, which is a good thing, and the payroll tax exemption until the end of the year for employees on the Senate floor. Again, the proposal that seems to be widely accepted is the cap on the unemployment. However, the Democrats want to not cap any kind of liability. And obviously, the small businesses are in enough trouble as it is. Can you imagine the number of lawsuits that if they don't cap the liability to an employer to bring back their employees? Some employee goes out to some COVID party, gets COVID, and he sues his employer, stating that he caught that at work, right? There's just no way that you can leave a liability unlimited. So right now, the Fed rates at 0 to 0.25%. We've got average money market rates between 0.15 and 0.25, and CDs have dropped in rates, so that's something to be very careful of. Not a good place to lock up your money right now. However, it is a good time to actually go to the banks and borrow as much as you can at the lowest rate for the longest period of time, and they're opening up lending a lot more than they were before. Housing indicators. Why the real estate surge? Well, you've got people working at home. You've got low interest rates. Remember, we've only got 11% unemployment, which means 89% of people are still working. However, again, let me state clearly, we have not seen this 8 million mortgages that are in forbearance or all of the unpaid rent. So what are the actions that we can actually take? Sell real estate now of high growth, refinance to take additional low cash out. Here's an example. What are the big players doing? Well, Warren Buffett just issued billions in debt. What does that mean? He's borrowing money. Why is Warren Buffett borrowing money? Well, when he can issue the debt at 1 to 1.5%, and he borrows billions of dollars, he knows he can turn that money around and make, even if it's 5, 6, 7%. Major companies are doing the same exact thing. On inflation, the B begins. Inflation has began to show its ugly head. Social Security is going to hinge in the next few weeks based upon your COLA for 2021. Tips, inflationary hedges. And hey, by the way, the feds have broken their policy. As you know, Fed Chairman Powell, and it's been a policy for many years to try to keep inflation under wraps, under caps, at least at 2%. However, they have now broken that. And now they say, hey, whatever happens with inflation, because they know that that's what's needed. They are partially following the 1929 crash playbook. And that basically said that they pumped money into the economy. They brought the economy back. But then when they tightened money, then we went into a secondary crash. So hopefully they're learning from that mistake. All right, stock market indexes. Well, as of yesterday, 7/24, the S&P 500 is only down about a little bit less than 0.5%. And the actions that we take now, hey, RMDs, payback or distribution options, watch out. IRS just changed the rules on who can take the extended withdrawal, the COVID relief package. You better make sure that you meet those new rules. There are a lot of people that took money out of their 401ks, their profit sharing plans, and their IRAs when the plan was first approved, because the IRS said all you have to do is prove that you have been financially hurt by the virus. However, now there's new regulations that are much, much more stringent. So if you got to pay it back, you better make sure you are looking at those rules. Otherwise, if they disallow your withdrawal, you're looking at tax plus a penalty, right? Now, rebalancing, tax loss harvesting, strategic distributions, And please, please, please recognize it's not reading tea leaves or reading a crystal ball, but for goodness sakes, if you couldn't see that, good example is I always use the 8-track. Some of you might be too young to remember this, but there used to be 8-tracks, and then 8-tracks turned to cassettes, and then cassettes turned to CD-ROMs, and then CD-ROMs turned to Blu-ray, and then Blu-ray turned to streaming. You got to look ahead and say, hey, if there are certain industries or certain things that are not going to be as flourishing as they were in the past, i.e. commercial real estate, i.e. retail, brick and mortar. So these are things that you got to look at to take advantage of. Refinance the home. Hey, sell your home now. There's a lot of people that are sitting out there on huge gains. If you don't mind renting for a year or so, play that game. We did that back in 2008. We sold the houses that we owned. We sat and rented for about 3 years, and then we bought back. We bought back at about 40% of what we would have purchased had we not sold in 2008. Prepare for the real estate buyback. And again, I'm estimating towards the end of next year. And please restructure your trust and family protection plan to conform with the new CARES Act and the new Secure Act. And Social Security's got some big changes coming up, and it could even be worse with the election changes. Hey, lastly, if you'd like to discuss any of these things, give our office a call, 844-702-1040. Again, it's 844-702-1040.